All right. So today we're going to talk about aliens and gas prices on episode 287 of the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. I am joined by VP Jim Lakely. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing just great. Keeping our listeners updated on all the things I'm watching. I watched My Octopus Teacher, a documentary on Netflix the other day.
That sounds like an adult film.
It is not an adult film. It is a film about an adult who forms a bond with a tiny octopus near his home and monitors that octopus for a year. It's actually quite touching when
it's something we could all relate to.
My assessment stands.
Okay.
Also joining us, Isaac Orr, research fellow at the Center of the American Experiment. How are you, good sir?
Hello.
What octopod documentaries have you been watching lately?
I just go
also
to the
joining us, Nate Myers,
dark web stuff, man.
Development person. Nate, how are you, good sir?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to discuss aliens today.
Yeah, I should write down your job title. It's just like as soon as we hit record, I thought of that. Like, I don't remember what it is. That's fine.
Development coordinator.
It took me like 6 months to remember Justin's title. So,
well, his always changes because he's always getting demoted.
That's true. That's true. He's been demoted a handful of times.
He got demoted off the show.
That is partially true. Isaac, I think you might be a little hot because of how last episode started. Is that the case?
Yeah.
So that's your response?
Justin's like, oh, he's not big timing us. Blah, 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 blah. He didn't even have his Whalers hat on.
I know, right?
So you took offense to that?
I only listened to the first 10 seconds, so I have no idea what happened after that. But I was posting this on our website, americanexperiment.org, so I don't have to write something on Saturdays. That's how it works.
Oh.
And I just was listening to the first 10 seconds. It's like, he's not big timing us. Like,
well,
freaking Haskins.
So you reached out to Justin and I and voiced your discontent with the way that episode started.
Yeah. Yes.
And Justin, he took that to heart. Good. Justin took that to heart. So he asked me in his absence of this episode to play this video for you. So
this is great.
So let's get this going.
All right, man. We're rolling whenever you're ready.
Wait, it's now?
Yeah,
I should go now?
Yeah,
okay.
Action.
All right. Dearest Isaac, it has come to my attention that your feelings were badly injured due to unfortunate comments made during the most recent episode of the In the Tank podcast. I've been told that someone, and I want to be clear that I'm not sure who that someone was, and I'm not sure how we'll be able to figure it out either, said in reference to your decision to blow off In the Tank for another show, quote, Isaac is not big timing us. No, he's not. He's just a leech on someone else who is more successful. Although I take no responsibility for those comments, nor am I willing to fully acknowledge that they actually happened, I want to express to you with every ounce of sincerity that I can muster, that I am truly, and I mean this with all of my heart, sorry. Hold on, that's not right. I want to express to you with every ounce of sincerity that I can muster, that I am truly, and I mean this with all of my heart, sorry for you. I now realize, Isaac, that you are a sensitive boy on a podcast full of men, and that sometimes when sensitive boys are faced with mean words, they fall to pieces and struggle to regain control of their lives. Even though you, Isaac, led a completely absurd, unjustified attack on my social media accounts over the past 2 years under the unfollow Justin banner, which failed miserably, by the way, as well as operated the highly insulting Justin T. Trash Bin's Twitter account, I still, because of my remarkable character, feel sorry for you. All I can do now is hope that you can manage to wipe away the many tears that you have shed over the past week and find the courage to put on your big boy pants and go back out into the world, a stronger man. Of course, I know that this will be difficult for you. So we at the Stopping Socialism Project, we are launching a full-scale investigation to get to the bottom of these insults.
That's right.
Led by none other than world-renowned investigative experts Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell.
Correct.
And they're going to look into the mean people who said those hurtful things that injured your little boy sensitivities. And we will not rest. We will not rest until those who perpetrated these cruel microaggressions against you are sternly scolded for making you sad. I want to leave you, Isaac, with the most important takeaways from my message today. Number 1, I did nothing wrong. Number 2, I admit to nothing. Number 3, I am sorry for you. Most sincerely, Justin T. Haskins, Supreme Chancellor and Grand Viscount of the Stopping Socialism Project.
All right.
That was the most Trumpian response I could think of.
Oh my God. I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
So are the fences mended, Isaac? Can we put this to rest now? We are going to get to the bottom of it. We don't know who said those hurtful things.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot.
Okay, great. Awesome.
It helps knowing somebody's sorry for me.
At least one person.
Yeah.
All right. So enough of that. So yeah, why did you big time us, man? What were you doing?
Because my boss was hosting Dennis Prager's show, and he told me I had to do it.
Oh, all right. So you went on to talk about what? Energy policy?
Yeah, Texas blackouts.
Ah, nice. All right.
Blew us off
cool.
for Prager. Yeah, we see how it is.
Yeah, blew us off for Prager.
I blew you off to leech off the success of somebody else.
Which is kind of like how you got on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Okay.
You know what, Jim? I expect an apology video recording to Isaac for next episode.
I'll start the script immediately after we get stopped.
Nothing's going to top that Justin video.
All right. So let's get to biz here. So every week, I sit down and I try to come up with topics to talk about on the podcast. And, they have to have some relation to public policy and all of that. And this week, sometimes it's just like obvious, like we're going to talk about the Texas blackouts. We're going to talk about the Great Reset or something like that. This week, it was a little less so. There was nothing obvious that I wanted to talk about. Isaac brought up the idea of talking about rising gas prices and how it relates to Biden policy and how it doesn't relate to Biden policy. So I was like, all right, that's we can work on that. I was like, maybe we should talk about the infrastructure bill that's going to be $5 trillion or something. To which Jim responded to that with a snooze emoji. So I was like, all right, fine, Jim. Let's talk about something much sexier than that.
But that's a huge deal because they're going to cram everything into the infrastructure bill. That's like modern monetary theory right there.
Well, that was going to be my angle. That was going to definitely be my Jim fell asleep.
All right. Well,
surely we'll talk about that in some case. I don't know where it currently stands, but surely it'll be top of mind at some point. But I was like, all right, fine. Let's talk about something much sexier than that. Let's talk about this report that's going to be coming out in June about UFOs and aliens. To which Jim said, oh, okay, that's fine. Something along those lines.
I guess
more policy oriented.
Yes.
Nate was
a show where we
more.
Explore public policy throughout the country. You seem to have dropped that from your introduction, Donald.
My justification is that all of public policy would go on the back burner if a UFO showed up tomorrow. You know what I mean? So,
we have to be prepared. We have to be. We will be on the vanguard of all think tanks in addressing the UFO phenomenon when it all presents itself to us.
That's right.
You'll be thanking us for this. They'll be coming to Fox News. Will be having all of us on their programming.
We're staking out our corner of this impending, huge story for sure.
As always, we'll be ahead of the curve.
Right. We're always ahead of the curve here, Isaac. Come on, man.
I'm pretty sure there's some
you're going on Dennis.
People.
You going on Dennis Prager talking about Texas blackouts that happened 6 months ago. That's what you do. We talk about what's coming up.
Yep.
I'm just an old news hack.
All right. So So how did this all come up? This report it's supposed to be coming out June 1st. How did this all come up? Well, it was actually part of the $2.3 trillion Corona relief and government funding bill that Trump signed into law in December. So as we know with pretty much every legislative thing in Washington, D.C., there's a million other components to it. So one of these components was a Senate Intelligence Committee's Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021 that had in it a committee comment section that addressed unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, which is the new term for UFO. Just an FYI, in case I say UAP at some point in
just say UFO. Segment. Forget UAP. We're not making that happen.
What is? Yeah, you can't make fetch happen.
Nope.
The COVID relief legislation set in motion a 180-day countdown for the Defense Secretary and Director of National Intelligence to present to the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committees what the U.S. government knows about UFOs. So the 180-day countdown expires June 1st. So in a world, where we talk day in, day out about politics, COVID, budget overlays, talk about aliens and UFOs, it's like a breath of fresh air. So on Fox News recently, Maria Bariromo. There's a T in there?
There is.
Okay. Had a guest on, John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe is a former national intelligence official. So Bariromo asked Ratcliffe about this impending report. Jim, do we have this queued up here, this video?
We do.
All right, let's play this.
Is a program that's been in place for a few years in terms of a task force that has been there under the National Defense Authorization Act. But as you correctly point out, Maria, there's now a report that will be issued by the Pentagon, by the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. I actually wanted to get this information out and declassified before I left office, but we weren't able to get it down into an unclassified format that we could talk about quickly enough. But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that frankly engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those. And I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, we always look for a plausible explanation. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technology that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Can you tell us where it was seen?
Actually, all over the world. There have been sightings all over the world. And when we talk about sightings, the other thing I will tell you is it's not just a pilot or just a satellite or some intelligence collection. Usually we have multiple sensors that are picking up these things. And so, again, some of this are just they're unexplained phenomenon. And there's actually quite a few more than have been made public. So I think it'll be healthy for as much of this information to get out there as possible so that the American people can see.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the extent of it. That's the latest, right? So those are the comments by John Ratcliffe about this upcoming June 1st report, this Pentagon report that's going to be released.
Watching that clip, Donald, I don't think Maria Bariromo was taking him very seriously.
You don't think so?
By the look on her face.
Well, I think it's just so outside the norm, of what she would generally talk about. But I know where I stand on alien stuff. Nate, I think that I have you pretty much pegged. We've talked about alien stuff in the past. But Jim and Isaac, I'm not so much sure where you guys line up. Jim, what is your kind of just initial take on just this general topic?
Well, I mean, there are things that pilots and military pilots and people with good reputations, they see things in the sky that cannot be explained. Now, that's a big leap from going to that to we are being visited by beings from another planet or another dimension or wherever else. When I was a kid, I mean, who doesn't love to think about these things and the possibilities that we are actually visited by people from another planet or dimension or whatever. And science fiction is an enormous multi-billion-dollar industry. I consume a lot of sci-fi. It's really fun and interesting, but I think it's kind of it's quite a leap to say that I saw something in the sky that I can't explain and that nobody can explain, to we're being visited by people from another planet other than these unexplained. And that's what UFO means. It's an unidentified flying object. It's something that people just don't recognize in the sky. That's all it is. And there can be lots of different explanations for these phenomena that we just don't understand yet, or just can't quite identify, because you see things from far off. And so you really don't get a good close look at it. That's the thing. It's kind of like Bigfoot. You know, when I was a kid, I when I go to the library, I would consume copious amounts of books about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and the Bermuda Triangle and UFOs and all of that stuff. And it's great fun reading when you're a kid. But then you start to realize that if these things were real, there'd be a lot more evidence for them than just things that you can't explain in the sky or fuzzy, grainy pictures of a guy in a monkey suit. I mean, you have to grow up and realize that until there is any scintilla of evidence supporting any of this stuff, it's all just fantasy. And I think our culture, obsessed with sci-fi, just kind of wants to believe, like the X-Files, Fox Mulder. You know, I want to believe. I want to actually see evidence.
Nate, hold your horses. Hold your horses. I know you want to respond.
All right.
I've got plenty of stuff that I know we both have on our little notes here. But Isaac, do you find yourself in the same stream as Jim, or are you with Nate and I?
I sent you a meme via email that I think accurately describes my feelings on this. So if you want to bring that up and share that with the audience,
oh man,
happy to do that. But
terrified.
I mean, it's really not that bad. Like,
it's showing that the History Channel, and using fairly maybe not quite appropriate imagery, that the History Channel is obsessed with aliens as opposed to historical accuracy.
Yeah, it's the Elmo meme. It's great.
It's one of my favorite memes. If you're referring to what I think you are,
I'm grabbing it. Go ahead, keep talking.
Yeah. I don't like aliens. I don't like the idea of aliens. It creeps me out. It's just like, okay, well, if they exist, we are in a lot of trouble, because they're like way more sophisticated technologically than we are. So I just prefer to not think about it ever.
Okay. All right. All right. So Nate, feel free to respond to Jim's dismissal of all of this unexplained stuff as
rather snooty dismissal of something that has plenty of evidence. Thank you very much. Well, I would just respond by saying we've never tracked Bigfoot on radar. We have tracked UFOs on radar. We've never had foolproof video evidence of Bigfoot. We do have foolproof evidence of a UFO. Not saying that it was an actual alien craft, but you can't deny that it's a UFO, and you can't deny that it's been tracked on multiple times on U.S. military intelligence, cameras and satellites. You have fighter jet pilots like Commander David Fravor off the coast of San Francisco, who tracked a UFO all up and down the western seaboard. It even appeared at his next rendezvous point that only he and his base knew that was going to be his next rendezvous point in his patrol, and it showed up exactly where he was supposed to be next within a matter of seconds. It's one thing to say like, like grainy photos and legends are one thing, but when you actually have physical evidence of something being there, you can't just shrug that off. I think that's a little more substantial than just some guy in an ape suit walking around in the forest.
Right. So
with tinfoil on his head.
Nate is referring to the pilot that is in this video, and I'll let him describe kind of what he saw. But this was a story that was going around. Nate, was it like a year ago it started getting a lot of attention? Was it even longer ago?
No, I believe it happened in 2019, so it was pretty recent.
Okay, all right. So let's play this, because this isn't just some schlub, with a grainy video in the woods.
And I also think you should preface is like, this guy has absolutely nothing to gain from like coming out and telling this story. Military people like him, especially higher ups, are actively discouraged from even bringing it up, especially to the media. So for him to come out and recount this story, and he even went on like people like Joe Rogan, and if you know Lex Friedman, he has a really good podcast. But this is somebody who had nothing to gain and actually everything to lose by coming out.
14-year Navy pilot veteran. So it's not like I said, this isn't just some guy trying to sell Jim weird videos at his library.
He's not selling crystals.
The longer your protracted sell for this video before you even hit play tells me a lot.
Yeah, sure.
I did 5 cruises to the Gulf. They started right after Desert Storm. I had an entire squadron. I had 12 airplanes and 330 people. This is mine. This is what we typically flew at night. You can see these little brackets here. November 14th, 2004.
That's
a clear blue sky. There's no wind. And you see this tic-tac. It's just this white object that's randomly moving around. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up a little bit. I remember telling my back seater, I said, dude, I don't know about you, but I'm a little weirded out. It's not a helicopter. It doesn't have rotor wash. There's no propulsion. There's no wings. It rapidly accelerates and disappears. Like, gone. Weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. I chased a UFO. But I like to just crawl back under a rock and be myself again. Yes.
There is more to that video, but you quickly find out, you get a reminder that bagpipes are the worst instrument ever made. So I'm not going to subject our listeners to that. But yeah, so that video that he's describing, which Nate also referenced, which was using U.S. military-grade sensors and tracking that could not keep up with this thing that's described as a tic-tac. Nate, you had mentioned Joe Rogan. Whenever Joe Rogan talks about this topic, he always starts off with this because it's like some of the most like hard to discredit evidence of like UFOs.
And we should also note that not only did he pick it up on his sensors, but he also visually saw it. So it wasn't like, it could have been like some weather phenomenon that he was
some weird anomaly.
Up. Yeah, that he was picking up on radars, and that's why it was popping in and out. He also visually tracked it with his own eyes. So there was something definitely there, a physical object.
Yeah. So again, Jim, how do you just discount that? I mean, surely I get it. Like maybe there's some other explanation. Although the way that this guy describes it, he talks about how this is a object that is outmaneuvering, some of the best technology in aerospace that has ever existed. And it's just like, is it some country? Did North Korea stumble upon some new technology that allows them to, get past physical limitations? Like, what's the explanation, Jim?
He saw something moving in the sky, and he tracked it and chased it, or tried to chase it. That doesn't mean it's aliens. It means it's something that he couldn't identify, and that was acting in ways that he didn't recognize as aircraft should be moving. That does not mean that there is some higher intelligence somewhere else in the universe visiting the United States just to kind of, troll and fighter pilots out there or something like that.
And maybe he was chasing the dragon.
I mean, yeah, something gets picked up on radar, but that doesn't mean that it is some kind of intelligent life somewhere else. We haven't found not even an inkling of any intelligent life anywhere in the universe. Yet here they are, right on in fact, we can't find them because they're in the house. They're in the house.
Well, Jim, in fairness,
come on.
If they can come here, they would be able to cloak themselves. Like they would be able to outsmart any technology that we have, right? Like. I think that if there is intelligent life out there and they're intelligent enough to find Earth, then they're intelligent enough to outsmart any of our radar.
Well, imaginative, speculative logic is my favorite kind of logic, so let's just make it entire. Of course they'd be able to cloak themselves. That's why we don't see them. Come on.
Well, let's talk about some of the other evidence or suggested evidence that is out there. So Ratcliffe and this Fravor guy are not the only high up people that are claiming some of this stuff. Former CIA director John Brennan, one of Jim Lakely's favorite people, said on a recent podcast in December that the videos from Navy pilots, quote, are quite eyebrow raising when you look at them. He also said that some of the phenomenon that we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life. So that was something that was recently said by, former CIA director. So again, not just some random schlub here with a grainy video in the forest. And then there was another story, and this is actually what Nate and I had a conversation about several months back. There was a New York Times article that came out. This was, summer of 2020, I believe. It was pretty recent.
Yeah. I had forgotten about this.
Yeah, so the New York Times article reported on a classified briefing to the Defense Department from astrophysicist Eric Davis, who worked as a consultant for the Pentagon, where he claimed that the government had in its possession, quote, off-world vehicles not made of this Earth. So, Jim, you just write off all these people, or what?
Where is it?
They're not showing it to you. I know VP of the Heartland Institute is a pretty big title here in Arlington Heights. But
you'd be surprised what that title gets me.
Really? What does it get you?
Yeah, it gets me.
Besides derision.
Let me ask you this, Jim.
It gets me a reserve table at Taco Bell, which I don't think you guys get, and that's pretty cool.
True. That's true. I get kicked out of Taco Bell.
That's
right. Go ahead, Nate.
Let me ask you this, Jim. If they did have evidence of extraterrestrial life, do you think they would share it with the general population? We see how easily spooked the general population is. We had a mildly worse flu, happen in late 2019, early 2000 or 2020, and the entire world lost its mind. Everything shut down. There was panic in the streets. People were looting grocery stores. Nothing was on the shelf. The entire economy shut down. Can you imagine what would happen if people actually knew that there were intelligent beings visiting our world? I mean, religions would collapse, governments would collapse.
I think
anarchy.
I think that because I've heard that a million times. Like, why would the government hide this? And it's like, why would the government hide this? And it's like, oh, it's going to cause a public freak out. I think that the explanation is a little bit more logical. So if there was a Roswell crash, and the government has, crashed alien technology, and if they said, hey, world, look, we've got crashed alien technology, then every other country around the world would demand that they have their scientists also be able to have access and investigate into this technology.
It would have the potential to spark World War III, honestly. Like, if one country did have alien tech and everyone else didn't, that's...
Yeah, it's a game changer.
That's a game changer. Let's paradigm shift.
Let's back up. The reason I'm sharing this, the famous aliens meme from the History Channel, the idea that the American public or the world wouldn't be able to handle learning that there are, aliens among us. I think our culture is ready for it. I mean, shows like, Ancient Aliens and all that stuff are extremely popular. And in fact, I think the newsy part about these stories that you shared for this podcast today in the USA Today, the New York Times, that pilot was on the #1 cable show in America with 7 or 8 billion viewers a night, Tucker Carlson, on talking about these things. If there was ever a weird phenomenon or hidden truth that America is ready to hear right now, it's that aliens are among us, because so far these have been in major media publications and outlets, and America's basically like, whatever.
I don't know, Jim. You go back 40 years and people would have looked at you crazy if you even suggested that UFOs.
It's not 40 years ago. It's 2021, brother.
That's exactly my point, though. If I was the U.S. government and I did have sensitive information about extraterrestrials, what I would do is I would try to slowly ease the public into the idea that UFOs and aliens might be real. You don't want to just drop it all on them all at once. You want to slowly kind of disseminate the prospect of that being real, the idea of that possibly being real into the general population to get their, the American psyche ready, and more so the world psyche, because the world kind of mirrors itself after what the United States does. So if you can get the American public ready for the concept of aliens, that disseminates to the rest of the world.
To Jim's point, I think Independence Day in the 90s already got us prepared for this. I mean,
that was the
What about
worst.
War of the Worlds? That
You
was
got-
a long time ago.
Yeah, but that freaked everybody out. That's
Yes.
to Nathan's point.
There were
Like-
people shooting water. What are they called? Water reservoirs because they thought they were alien ships. that should tell you how the American people would have originally reacted without this being disseminated into the.
You know,
War of the
I
Worlds
actually
was 100 years ago almost.
was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I actually listened to that original broadcast, and like it did a pretty convincing job of making you feel like it was a real thing going on. So I understand people's kind of freak out about that, but you know, when you got Will Smith and what's his face flying into an alien ship, you know, I feel pretty safe. You know,
Like
I think the
jiggy
general public
with the aliens.
yeah. So I was starting to look back at this because, you know, there's a number of stories about, you know, alien disclosure. I think that there is clearly incentive for the government to keep it under wraps, not necessarily to not freak out the public, but like I said, to make sure that they're the only ones that have access to whatever technology that they've stumbled across, whether it was in a, you know, crash in the desert or something like that. But I was actually interested to find that there has been a push for UFO information disclosure for a long time in the government. So back in the Clinton years, during the 90s, the Rockefeller Initiative funded a movement to get the Clinton administration to disclose info on UFOs. So this didn't amount to much. However, it seemingly set off an obsession with John Podesta, a former chief of staff for Bill Clinton, that has continued to this day, where he is a constant and consistent advocate of disclosing information on UFOs.
So is Harry Reid. Surprisingly,
I was going to bring him up. Harry Reid's another one. Some of the people that were a part of that intelligence committee that like heard that briefing from that Eric Davis included like Marco Rubio, who was like specifically interested in or worried about UFO activity over U.S. military bases. So, you know, again, this isn't just nobodies that are just spouting off. And it's easy to think that way, because if you were to watch the rest of that video that I started where I mentioned the bagpipes thing, it shows like the audience that is really obsessed with aliens, and it's really hard to take any of those people seriously. So I get it. I get the knee jerk to just dismiss all of this. It's just like, it's lunacy. But you've got like high up people in the government, and you've got classified briefings in front of Congress, when you've got these Pentagon reports that are going to be coming out in June. It's really hard for me to just dismiss it all. It really is.
Well, and going back to I think there's also kind of a misconception, especially among critics of the UFO world, where it's like, oh, you know, a lot of this hoopla comes from America specifically. It's not like if aliens showed up, they would just be visiting the U.S. Why are all these reports just coming from the U.S.? However, if you take a look at the evidence, there are UFO sightings all over the world year round. I mean, it doesn't get much press coverage because the United States is pretty, you know, self-centric. But even if you go back, I mean, really, it's kind of eerie that it seems to all these UFO reports in modern times seems to start after World War II with the invention of the nuclear bomb. Coincidence? I don't know. But it was I can't remember the name of the guy, but there was a gentleman who's really into the UFO research, and he made a point of contacting former Soviet Union officials to try to talk to them about what they had witnessed during the Cold War. And through one way or another, there was one Russian official who was able to meet with this guy and talk to him. And apparently the Soviets had been seeing UFOs all throughout the Cold War. Even during World War II, they would show up over Soviet military bases. And this was happening on the U.S. side as well. And this is all declassified information now. And these crafts would show up to military bases and hover over the military bases. They would play with the controls to the nuclear silos. They would turn all of them on, and the silos would warm up, and then they would turn them back off. They would completely take away the controls from the launch code, so they didn't have any control over the nukes at all. I mean, so this was happening all throughout the Cold War, not only on our side, but on the Russian side as well.
So, you know, it's an interesting topic, and we can cover a ton of these stories. But what do you think is going to actually come out June 1st? Like Nate, what do you think? I mean, I'm sure that you and I are probably the more hopeful of the four on this podcast, but what do you think is going to? You think it's going to be a nothing burger? Do you think there's going to be some interesting quotes in there? Full on disclosure? Where are you at?
No, we're not going to get full on disclosure. I doubt the U.S. government would ever give us full out disclosure. I think it would take the mothership showing up on the White House lawn for them to be like, yeah, okay, they exist. But I think it'll be mostly a nothing burger with perhaps a few interesting tidbits. I imagine there's going to be a wealth of documents released, kind of like some of the other information dumps that have happened recently. But I imagine most of it's just going to be blacklined.
Yeah, just a whole lot of info of just like this pilot said he saw this, and this was reported here and there, or something like that.
Yeah, I imagine most of the documents will be redacted.
Jim, what do you think? Do you think this is going to be a whole lot of nothing on June 1st, or what?
Well, unless the cigarette smoking man from the X-Files comes out and is leading that press conference, I'm not going to believe a word of it. But I think you guys are going to be extremely disappointed because, again, UFO stands for unidentified flying object. And all this revelation is going to be is that there are a longer list of things that pilots and other people that have witnessed things cannot explain. And that's it. There's not going to be an explanation for it. There's not going to be any evidence. There's not going to be any special new metal alloys that no one's ever seen before that'll be submitted to the public for its own review. None of that is going to happen. You guys are going to be extremely disappointed. And actually, what's going to be great about whatever is revealed by June 1st is that it's just going to feed into more conspiracies that that the American public is being kept from the truth. That the truth is out there, as Fox Mulder said, and as the motto of the old X-Files show, which I love. It's just these are just unidentified things. We can't explain them. I think we should continue to investigate them and figure out what's going on. But it's not going to end up being aliens. Sorry.
Well, to quote, Will Smith, when I see aliens, I'm going to say, "Welcome to Earth." So, all right, Isaac's completely checked out, so maybe we should switch topics here and get into something that's a little more in his wheelhouse.
Why bother at this point?
Come on, man.
We could always go into Bob Lazar.
Oh God, I know. Yeah, like I said, there's a ton of stuff that we could get into. I mean, there's.
Go for it.
No. We're gonna switch topics.
Don't tempt me.
Why?
Because I want to talk about your thing here, because I think that this is interesting and this applies to people's daily life, whereas aliens maybe doesn't. So
how would we even know? We can't.
So I want to talk about Joe Biden's gas. So this is a thing that comes up. This is a radically shifting topics, by the way. Sorry for the whatever knee jerk here, but. Whenever you're talking with friends and family, amongst the standard chit chat, inevitably lately, there is the, oh man, have you seen gas prices lately? That question comes up constantly. And obviously this is different depending on where you live around the country, but around here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but gas was like $2.50 a gallon a few months ago. Now it's upwards of like $3.15. Like it's a pretty substantial increase.
In the city, it's almost $4.
Yeah. So it's and it keeps ticking up, right? So the knee-jerk reaction of people on our side of the aisle is like, damn it, Joe Biden. I'm like, thanks Joe Biden for making our gas prices go up. And
thanks, Obama.
And I understand the knee-jerk because, if you listen to this podcast, we talk all the time about Joe Biden's energy policies that are going to inevitably cause energy prices to increase, including gas prices, the price at the pump. But hold your horses, listeners, because that might not be the whole story, according to this author, which is Isaac Orr, who recently published this article titled, "Don't Blame Biden for Rising Gas Prices." So, Isaac, how much did they pay you?
The Biden administration?
I'm just kidding.
I got like eight Werther's originals for that one.
Nice.
And I've got a bead on one of those chair lifts for my stairs.
You got to hold out for a Cadbury cream egg.
Those hard candies that he has in a glass container next to his door.
That's right.
For guests. But yeah, so explain it. explain why can't we blame Joe Biden for rising gas prices?
Because he hasn't been in office for very long, and he hasn't gotten to do all the terrible things that he wants to do yet. So that's why I don't get it, right? Like, there are a lot of macroeconomic factors that have a bigger impact on oil prices than what Joe Biden has been able to do over the last, 2 months. He's been president for 2 months now, and everybody's trying to jump the gun. It's not that I think that he's going to be good for gas prices long term, but we had a global pandemic that resulted in a huge drop off in demand for oil, mostly because the airline industry is incredibly oil intensive. Like, you're talking gallons per mile instead of miles per gallon when you're in an airplane. So that falling away, people working from home, not going to work, huge drop in demand. Oil prices were negative for a little bit, and that incentivized drillers to say, hey, we need to slow up. We can't spend money to lose money. So you saw a huge drop in the number of drilling rigs in the United States. It went from 663 in March of 2020 to 178 in August. So, that's the free market, baby. That's, supply and demand. When there's an oversupply, low prices, they cut back. But now that we're starting to see economic activity start to rebound, especially in China, air traffic is about 2/3 of what it was pre-pandemic, and people are starting to drive again. That means that the demand for oil is picking up, but the supply hasn't caught up to meet it. So that's why we're seeing the high prices. Obviously, Biden killing Keystone isn't good for long-term oil demand, but it's really no change. Only 10% of that pipeline has been built so far, and the banning the issuance of permits for drilling on federal land, that's a long-term thing, right? Like, a lot of those companies already have leases for federal land that they can develop. So, it's just premature.
So is it possible, though, that, gas companies are already kind of factoring in what these future conditions are going to be under a Biden-Harris administration?
The Harris administration?
Yeah, and they're just they're preemptively rising prices because they know what the future holds for them? Is that possible?
If the United States had a monopoly on the oil bought and sold in the country, you could think that way. But it's a global commodity, right? The price of oil isn't determined by, what happens in the United States. It's all the other producers. So we basically have a global price for oil. You'll have regional differences, but if the folks in the United States say, well, we're going to try and raise our prices in order to, kind of hedge for that risk, then somebody in Saudi Arabia or Russia can sell their oil and replace that oil at a lower price. So they really don't have that kind of market power.
So by the end of your article, which I will link in the show notes, everything that we talk about will be linked in the show notes here, or you can find it at, what's your website?
AmericanExperiment.org.
AmericanExperiment.org. By the end of the article, you start talking about the energy policies that Biden is putting in place or wants to achieve, likely will achieve over the next, however, his 10-year, that will inevitably lead to gas prices rising, energy prices rising. Even when we covered all of these topics on past episodes of the podcast, we kind of put that in there, that it might be, months, years before we see these things kind of go down the track, which leads to increased gas prices. So I think you should change the name of the article, because I think that stuff towards the end is actually very persuasive. And you should change the article to "Don't blame Biden for rising gas prices, ... yet."
I thought about that previously.
Why didn't you do it?
I don't know. I just wanted to see how many of my own people I could make angry. Every once in a while, I like to write an article on our website that just makes our own folks mad and get all kinds of mean emojis on our Facebook page. I wrote one. Remember when that grifter guy was trying to raise money to build the wall?
Oh, yeah. It was through a Kickstarter or something.
Yeah. So I just said lack of GoFundMe donation shows people don't really want the wall. I got so much hate mail for that one.
Oh my God.
So every once in a while, I just like to write something that, riles up my own base in a way that, maybe triggers them a little bit. And
good for you.
I think Well, it's fun, right? Like,
well, I get it. You know, we
you got to
get
melt
stuck
the
in.
snowflakes every once in a while.
I had I think it was my dad was asking me, oh, you see the gas prices, right? That's kind of how I came up with that intro to all this topic.
Right.
And I really wanted to just start laying into like, well, see, this is what we get. We elected Joe Biden because Donald Trump had mean tweets, and it's just it's reflected in these gas prices. But like, I knew that like that wasn't necessarily the case. So I'm just like, yeah, it's crazy stuff, man.
Well,
I mean, in 2 years, like you'll be able to post. I love this image. It's like the water rising, and it says "but nice tweets" on a sign. Like I put that on Twitter all the time. So like there will be a big increase in gas prices if Biden is able to do a lot of the things that Obama was trying to do. Like they were trying to put additional emissions regulations on methane in drilling operations. Basically try to restrict the amount of acres that we can drill for oil in, and that will have an impact on the ability of producers to meet demand and put upward pressure on supply and prices, or downward pressure on supply, upward pressure on prices. So it'll happen. It's just too soon to say Biden's the fault. And I think that part of me was like, is it self-serving a little bit to go out there and say like, hey, I'm willing to call balls and strikes, like, yeah, for sure. I could put yet on there, and that would be legit.
Do you guys? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead, Nate. I'll wait.
Oh, I was just going to ask. Do you guys think the blocking of the Suez Canal is going to have an effect on gas prices? I don't know if you've kept up with that story.
I haven't really kept up with it. I'm sure it will, because it's a lot of. I think the crude oil, they have a pipeline workaround, but it's the delivered products like the gasoline and all of that stuff that they don't have a pipeline network for. So the gas prices will be impacted more than the oil prices, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Isaac, so one of the things in the show notes will be this article by Liz Peek over at the Hill, hill.com. So there's two things actually I'd like you to address. One is that one is from me, and one is from this story. One is that I do remember what gas prices were at the end of the Obama administration. It was, $3.80 or to $4 a gallon in Oak Park, Illinois, and other places. It was over $5, I think, in California. That was pretty regular, and it was basically high gas prices pretty much all through the entire Obama administration. But then when Trump got elected and said we're going to be opening up more fracking, we want to become energy independent, that worked. It happened. Trump's policies made the United States the largest energy producer in the world, something that was considered impossible just a few years prior to that. So what made those prices come down actually pretty quickly, I think, at the end of the Obama administration, switching to the Trump administration. And two, Liz Peek says here in this piece at the Hill, Biden pushed those prices, gas prices at the pump, which were already rising because of severe weather, even higher by gratuitously alienating Saudi Arabia. The Gulf Kingdom just surprised energy markets by announcing it would not raise oil output despite developing supply constraints and rising prices. And that oil prices jumped at this news, popping 4% to pre-pandemic levels for the first time in a year. So it seems, at least on the on the global scale, oil prices are rising, and so usually when oil prices rise globally, you start to see that reflected in the pump. And this article in the Hill newspaper said that those prices spiked immediately because of the policies that Biden had announced and started to implement. How do you answer those two questions?
Well, the data doesn't support your first statement. So the oil prices increased in, I guess if you want to go from 2008 until 2014, oil prices were higher than they were in 2016. But in 2015, they were lower. In 2016, they were lower. It was $2.07 per gallon, according to the US EIA, or Energy Information Administration. So really what happened was oil prices were high until 2014, and then they cratered. And that led to very low gas prices. They were below $2 a gallon in Wisconsin, where I was living at the time. So I don't think that's quite accurate. I think that that's mostly a supply and demand thing. We also saw in 2014, OPEC decided that they were going to flood the market with oil in order to try to push out American oil development. So really from 2010 until 2014 is when shale development in the United States was ramping up in terms of oil production. And now we're seeing consistently lower prices. So I think that that's part of it. And OPEC is always OPEC, right? Like they don't need to pump more oil in order to help the United States have lower gas prices. That's never been their game. That's why we had high oil prices to begin with. So Saudi Arabia doesn't have a financial incentive to sell their oil for less by producing more. Like they're the global superpower when it comes to oil. We produce more oil than Saudi Arabia, but they have a lot more spare capacity. So they can just kind of hold back. And, you know, if you could sell your product for more and pump less, then you're going to do that. So that's probably more why Saudi Arabia is doing this. I mean, I don't know anything about foreign relations, right? Like I don't understand like the interplay between administrations and how that affects their willingness to play ball on certain energy policies. So that may be a factor. I'm just not very well versed on that, and I don't know enough about it to speak to it intelligently.
Yeah, you know, I remember. I don't know. Maybe you can pinpoint the year, but I remember when like we were first getting into $4 gas. It's like 2012, 13, 14, somewhere around there. What was it, Isaac?
I mean, in Illinois, it was probably 2011, 12, 13, and possibly 14, right?
And I remember thinking like, man, it's $4 and there is nothing that's going to like drive this down. Like maybe I should start thinking about getting some hybrid vehicle or something like that, right? Like we're going to have $6 gas soon. And then from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was the fracking revolution that actually caused such a glut of energy in this country that it drove gasoline prices down to like where we were seeing it before, where it was like sub $2 and stuff. So like, is that kind of a similar situation that we're in now? Like, what is your, put on your like Nostradamus cap and give us like a prediction of what the future holds for us at the pump?
Well, I'm just going to start this off by saying nobody knows that. Like even the oil economist, Daniel Yergin, he says like, I don't know what it's going to be. So if he doesn't know what it is, then there's no way I can. But so the shale revolution happened in spite of what Obama was doing, not because of it. So, you know, that was a headwind for oil producers. Trump was a tailwind. So I do think that there's going to be some sort of, there's going to be another big headwind basically when it comes to oil production. But there's only really going to be so much that the Biden administration can do to stop some
the
of this.
Biden-Harris administration,
the Obama-Biden-Harris administration. So they're gonna do their best to do things that gum up the works. They're gonna delay pipeline infrastructure build-outs. They're probably gonna try and limit the ability for the U.S. to do like new refineries or export oil to other countries. So I would imagine that and it's so hard to know what that's going to do. If we can't export as much oil, maybe that leads to lower prices initially, and then long term it reduces production. So it kind of all equals out. But I would say that they're probably going to try and do some funny business with just artificially making gas more expensive by having another gas tax. So I would say the prices will go up relative to where they were in the last 4 years. But how much that happens is anybody's guess.
It's pretty wild because I remember saying on this podcast a couple of years ago at this point that when it was like sub $2, that if you factored in inflation, like just a couple of years ago, we had the cheapest gasoline ever. If you factor in inflation, obviously there's people listening to this like, I remember filling up for 15 cents on the gallon. But when you factor in inflation, the like $1.50 that was on the actual sign in front of the gas station was the cheapest gas that we've ever had in this country. So, I mean, when you keep that in context, $3.15 doesn't seem historically that high. But as you mentioned at the tail end of that article, the policies that the Biden-Harris administration are pursuing are going to push that number up. Jim, Nate, do you have any comments on this topic?
Well, I think just real quick, I think that's actually the point here is that, the Biden-Harris administration is following up with what the Obama administration wanted to do. And Obama famously in I think an interview with the editorial board at the San Francisco Chronicle, back when he was running for president the first time in 2008, said that if things all go well, like he wants them to go, energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. And he meant that for gasoline too. The people on the left, Democrats especially, in this country, desire higher gas prices. They want, and they've talked about this openly, that their ideal is to have the gasoline be as expensive for us as it is for Europeans, and that they want $6-7 a gallon gasoline. Why? So that we stop driving our cars, that we get onto buses and onto trains, and that we buy really expensive either hybrid or plug-in electric cars. That's their long-term goal. They realize they can't make people do it. We're trying to pay people to buy electric cars, and we still can't get the market up as far as the left would like it to be. So this is actually their policy goal. They want $4, $5, $6 gallon gasoline at per gallon gasoline prices. So they are pursuing policies to do all they can to make that happen. Trump did the opposite. He tried to pursue policies that would make gasoline as cheap as possible because, frankly, it is a pretty regressive tax on the poorest among us who have to use their cars. The poorest among us want $2 a gallon gasoline. The richest among us don't care. They can handle it.
So yeah, read all this on the show notes. Check it out, americanexperiment.org. So following up on a topic that we covered a couple of weeks ago where Joe Biden hadn't had a press conference in over 50 plus days or something like that. And it was, when is he going to have a press conference? Well, it looks like he's having a press conference right now as we're recording this. So I just looked up on Twitter, Biden press conference, just to get a feel of how people are responding to this. And as you would expect, it is right down partisan lines. I've just got a list of blue check marks here. And it ranges from everything from Joe Biden is doing an outstanding job in this press conference to now Joe Biden is yelling, this press conference is a dumpster fire. So I think for next episode, we might have to maybe this will be a homework assignment for Jim to watch this and give his assessment on how this is going. Oh, you got a clip here?
No, I'm not turned on the sound, but it is actually happening right now as we're recording this podcast. That is Joe Biden's press conference, which
we're not sure if it's green screened. So there's always that possibility. I see that there's no stairs leading up to his platform there, so that's a good sign. Sorry,
the chair lift is hidden behind those flags.
That's right.
I felt so bad watching that, though. Didn't you guys?
Him falling down the stairs?
Oh
yeah,
no, I savored
the stairs. Yeah,
that was awful.
Oh no, I savored that. That's the leader of the free world getting blown over by wind. Are you freaking kidding me?
Maybe it was aliens.
The amount
maybe
who knows? Zapped by an invisible ray.
Probably, yeah.
At first my knee-jerk reaction to that was like, oh, there's surely people aren't going to talk about this nearly as much as they talked about Trump, using like his other hand to drink some water or something like that. But I think I was proven wrong. There has been an onslaught of like memes and jokes and parody stuff about Joe Biden not being able to climb stairs that I'm actually like, you know what? I think that there's actually a fair, obviously CNN probably didn't cover it as much as like the Trump stuff, but I saw so much coverage of Joe Biden not being able to walk upstairs. I think that it's probably when you take everything into account, pretty fair.
Well, I just saw a news alert come up on my computer as you were talking there.
So, did he fall down the stairs after the press conference? Then?
No. Biden, age 78, says he plans to run for re-election.
Oh, no kidding! Wow,
so he'll be 82 when elected to his second term. Isn't that something?
I thought he said that he had no plans on doing that.
That was kind of the bargain in the 2020 election, wasn't it? To get the bad orange man out of there and get this little placeholder until we get a proper, young, vigorous Democrat in office instead. But I guess Biden doesn't like that.
That's a bunch of malarkey. Joe Biden is a very young and energetic person.
Come on, man. All right, boys, I got to jump. Check me out at the Fracking Guy on Twitter and check me out at americanexperiment.org. Thanks very much for listening. Justin, that was a great apology. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciated that. I could tell how sincerely troubled you were by your comments, and I forgive you, sir.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the In the Tank podcast. If you like our show, please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes. That would be greatly appreciated. You could find our podcast pretty much everywhere you find podcasts nowadays, whether it's Spotify, Google, YouTube, wherever. If you would like, you can send us your comments, questions, and comments to the show by emailing us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim, where can the fine people find you?
You can find me at Jay Lakely on Twitter. You can also follow the Heartland Institute at Heartland Inst on Twitter. And you can always go to heartland.org.
And Nate is a ghost on social media as of now, but is there anything you want to plug?
Of course, I would just like to say as a final note, Jim, there's still more evidence for aliens than there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. So I will leave that with you. And
right.
Everybody have a good night.
All right,
that's like saying 0 divided by 0 is 0.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to have.
We still declared war over that, but not aliens.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.